And tonight on the Daily Wrap, who needs the Patriot Act when the FBI has already been running its very own Air Force to run surveillance programs right here at home? We'll air all the shady details. The TSA is reduced to a punchline after failing nearly every test possible. Are you at risk when flying the not-so-friendly skies? And Hillary Clinton sees her polling numbers hit their lowest point in nearly 15 years. Is it time for her to put up instead of shutting up? We talk about all that, plus potluck and yay and nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host. He is a Sirius XM radio host and senior political columnist for Forbes. He is Rick Unger.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. And to his right, power attorney and America's pundit, Heather Hansen, is back. And finally, he's the editor of thewisdomdaily.com, Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, here in Bears, Navy, and Orange. Well played, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download. And as the Senate struggles to move forward on surveillance bills, we're learning for the first time about another spying program. The FBI now confirming it's operating a small air force with dozens of low-flying planes equipped with video and cell phone surveillance technology. The plane surveillance equipment is generally used without a judge's approval. More from Heather Hansen in a moment. The FBI says the flights are used for specific ongoing investigations and not for mass surveillance. The Bureau also pointing out that this program is not secret. Funny, I didn't hear about it before today. But it goes to great lengths to conceal its ownership of the planes, which are registered to fictitious companies serving as fronts for the government. The AP traced at least 50 aircraft back to the FBI and identified more than 100 flights in the past month or so. Let's bring in former Congressman Charlie Bass. He's a Republican from New Hampshire. Mr. Bass was also a member of the Intelligence Committee. Good guy to have here tonight, no question. So, Charlie, let's talk about the reaction to the surveillance program. It's now being confirmed by the FBI. Did you know about it before? Are you surprised? And is this something Americans should be concerned about?
Well, I didn't know about it, but the program has been known about. It was first appropriated in, money was appropriated for it in 2009, about $5.2 million. But what's surprising to me is that it was apparently covert. These phony companies and different signatures, same person signing, this sort of thing. My question is, why did they make it covert? Why did they need to collect information over American cities? What was it used for, and what safeguards do American citizens have that their privacy rights have been protected?
Congressman, it's Rick Unger. You make a great point. It is the covert nature of this that I think is getting everybody's attention. Look, the CIA is not allowed to spy domestically, but the FBI certainly has investigative powers within the country. I wonder if we can take them at their word when they say that this was not a question of mass surveillance, but was rather using these planes are part of specific investigations, which would be appropriate if that's true.
That's correct, and I think we need to get to the bottom of this because this is just the beginning of this sort of meshing of technology and national security, law enforcement, and so forth. If you think it's bad now with aircraft, 80 aircraft going around the cities of America, imagine what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years when the skies are darkened with drones collecting all this information. And I think the committees of jurisdiction, on the House side at least, Homeland Security and Judiciary, should hold hearings immediately and get the appropriate officials up there to discuss exactly what they're doing and why.
Mr. Bass, I want to ask you, the FBI has said in the past that they never throw anything away, that they keep everything that they have. Here they're doing this fishing with a great big net as opposed to a hook. In your experience, do you think that this is the type of information, all of these different people's cell phone information, something that they would keep or something that they would throw away, which I think is mandated by the Constitution? I
can't answer that question. I think it's a question that should be asked of them when they're called up to the Hill. The fact is that we don't know anything about this program, at least I don't, and I doubt that very many members of Congress or senators do. And I know the American people don't know anything about it. And I just think it is, you have to believe that they're going to keep information as long as they possibly can. And I think it's unnecessary. However, we ought to give them a chance to get up on the Hill and tell the American people what it's all about before we draw too many conclusions.
Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it tonight, and
Glad
certainly
to
we'll be talking about this more. And when we do, we'll definitely have you back.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy the warm weather down there.
I will.
For those watching in other parts of the country, it's like 50, and I think I saw my own breath outside before. It's miserable here in New York, and the same in Washington, according to the congressman. Oh, well, okay, good, Heather. Always the optimist. Yes. So anyway, when you heard about this today, and it was a pretty big story, were you surprised from a legal standpoint that this was going on?
Well, yeah, it's shocking from a legal standpoint. It's not surprising as far as this administration. The cell phone surveillance that they're doing in these particular planes has been used on cell towers called stingrays. It was first discovered back in the fall. I wrote a piece about it and whether or not it's constitutional. So the fact that it's happening didn't surprise me, but it is completely at odds with our constitutional case law. The fact that they're taking video from these planes is actually permitted according to the Supreme Court under the Constitution. There is a case where they were seeing somebody growing pot in his backyard, and the Supreme Court said as long as anyone flying by in a plane could perhaps see their backyard, then they have no reasonable expectation of privacy. But the cell phone information, the fact that they're getting and keeping, arguably, all of this cell phone information is certainly questionable. It hasn't been decided by our Supreme Court, but it will be.
So, Brad, the NSA goes away, but really, who cares? Because the FBI has its own Air Force.
Well, it's not exactly an Air Force, but I think let's start with a premise. Do we agree that this country is at war?
Yes.
If we agree that this country is at war with global Islamic terror, then can we imagine that the norms under which we operate are going to be adjusted? That's not a carte blanche for the federal government to do anything it wants. That's actually the death of the Constitution, and it has to be dealt with if that's what's going on. But I don't know that we've really been willing to fully internalize, if we genuinely are at war, what that does mean in terms of information gathering, in terms of expectations of privacy, and a whole variety of other things, let alone how privacy itself, I believe, is going to be redefined in this century.
We're making some presumptions here I think we have to be careful about. The FBI has said, I don't know, you can believe them or not believe them, but they've said that they're using these planes for specific investigations.
Right, it's not mass
for
collection.
mass.
Right.
And if it's not mass collection, there's nothing really wrong happening here.
Right.
I don't know if they're telling the truth, but they are entitled to do that for a specific investigation.
But it's impossible with the technology that
Well,
we have.
it's not impossible.
No, it
You
depends
can
how they would
absolutely
be
focus
using it.
The type of cell phone technology with these stingrays, it is impossible.
Well,
But-
not if they
but-
don't keep it. I mean,
But that's different than what you just said. Keeping it is different. You're right. If they take it and then throw it away, which is why I asked the congressman.
or if they're honing in on a certain phone.
Impossible.
Okay. Well, in any event, we do have to give them a chance to say what they're really doing.
Yep.
Secondly, so we don't mislead people, this is important. The Senate did accept the House bill
Yes.
today. They did pass it. It is going to the president for signature tonight. The Homeland Security and NSA will be back in action in the morning.
It will,
So,
right?
yes.
I just want to know how much pot that guy was growing in the yard you were referring to.
And why
Boy.
you didn't get any.
Oh,
Right.
stop it, stop it. It must be a forest back there. Anyway, this is another government agency is under scrutiny this evening. President Obama says he still has confidence in the Transportation Security Administration, that's the TSA, despite a scathing report on stunning security breaches at our nation's airports. Airport screeners failed to detect mock explosives and banned weapons in, get ready, 95% of tests carried out by undercover agents. Let's repeat that again, a 95% failure rate.
This is shocking. If there's a silver lining here, it's that it is so shocking, it's going to require immediate action. This has got to be a top-to-bottom effort, looking at the trainers, how we hire them, how we train them, how they perform their job, looking at the equipment that's supposed to detect a lot of this stuff.
And in the least surprising news of the day, the acting TSA administrator has been reassigned as a result of this embarrassing report. How does this happen, Rick?
Well, what's surprising is that he wasn't fired, that he was reassigned. Look, one thing we have to be careful that people understand. It doesn't mean that 95% of all tests are wrong. They did pick certain specific places they knew were trouble areas to do it, but it is not good.
Not reassuring at all.
No.
Particularly that one grenade that got through looked like the size of a beach ball.
We clearly have a problem on the ground. Secret Service, TSA, we've got no problem in the air with the drones and the planes, but on the ground we have a problem.
True, Brad. 10
We've
seconds.
got to turn security from a job into a career and get the highest level people doing it. It's a human personnel challenge.
And that'll be the last word there. Coming up next, Hillary takes a stumble in the polls. We talk about that next. Keep it right here on Newsmax.
This, please. If you go to the end of the line.
Okay. May I have it?
Why don't you go to the end of the line?
Yeah, we'll take care.
Ruh-roh. Well, welcome back to the Daily Wrap.
Why is everybody killing her?
Yeah, hey, rules are rules. Oh, by the way, I'm Joe Concha. I'm along here with my co-host. That's Rick Unger, Heather Hansen, and Brad Hirschfield, all chatty Cathys tonight. That was Hillary Clinton asserting her authority on the rope line after a campaign event in New Hampshire in May. That video was released by the Conservative America's Rising PAC, which has been closely following Mrs. Clinton on the campaign trail. The video does go on to show the likely Democratic nominee giving the woman an autograph minutes later after the line finally cut down and she got to the front of it. This awkward interaction comes on the heels of a new poll that finds Hillary's unfavorable ratings have slipped to their lowest level in 14 years. Let's check out the new CNN ORC poll, and it finds 50% of Americans now have an unfavorable view of Mrs. Clinton. The poll also finds 57% say she's not honest and trustworthy, half say Clinton does not inspire confidence, and 52% say the former Secretary of State does not care about people like them, Romney-like. And in head-to-head matchups, Clinton's lead is vanishing. Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, and Scott Walker are all within the margin of error. Jeb Bush trails by 8 points, John Kasich not mentioned. If you're the Hillary Clinton campaign, do these numbers concern you, Mr. Unger?
No, I think you do. They don't. I'm
surprise.
sorry. I don't know why that's shocking to any of you. We're supposed to be political analysts, and political analysts know that anything you see at this stage is nothing. Look, if there's
There are
one thing,
527 days now left.
yeah, but if there's one thing that will concern them a bit, it's the trustworthy thing. This has not been good for her, the things that have happened in the past 2 months. But nobody in the Clinton campaign ever thought she would hold on to the ratings that you get when you're not in a political job. She was not in a political job as Secretary of State. Nothing shocking about that at all. Now, what you do have here at this level is a baseline where you see them going down substantially, then they start to have reason to worry. It's okay that they're roughly 50-50. If they start to go up, I suspect what you'll see is bouncing up and down from here for a long time.
The one number that I would find disconcerting if I were in the Clinton camp is the whole she can't relate to us number, the number that hurt Romney so much. Democrats always have this inherent advantage that they could relate to the little guy better than Republicans, because Republicans only like the rich.
That's fair. Yeah. I'd watch it. At the stage that we're in, it's like being a doctor and saying to a patient, let's keep an eye on it.
Sure.
Because yes, if those stay depressed, if she doesn't get some benefit coming up out of that, then there's reason to be concerned about it.
Do you think the speeches and all the perception that they earned all this money is finally showing that Hillary Clinton is sort of for the rich, which is unbelievable when you think about it's a Democrat we're talking about.
I think that's a big part of it, but I think what worries me more than what either of you have talked about is the fact that it's independents and women that she's losing. Mm-hmm. And those are two big groups that she...
At this moment in time, she never had them yet.
Women?
Pretty sure she had women.
I'll tell you what, I'll make you all bets at this very moment, this early, that when the votes are counted, she'll have women.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying she won't, but the drop in women,
doesn't mean anything.
I think it means quite a bit when you're talking about women who are wanting to support her because she's a woman, and then they find out more about her, and then that number drops. I think that it's something that she needs to be quite concerned about.
Let's be sure to keep the tape of this show.
Okay.
Look, in terms of predictive value of polls at this point, Rick's 100% right. They have almost no predictive value. In terms of people's relationship to candidates at this point, they have tremendous predictive value. And I'm actually surprised her numbers are as high as they are because, and it's not about money. Actually, Americans are quite comfortable with people who have been successful. I think the challenge is here, they feel that she has gamed the system. And that's why she's not trustworthy. Americans from rich to poor have happily supported very wealthy candidates and will do so again if they fundamentally feel they have earned it, not they gamed the system.
There'll be another candidate on one side or the other side that will be taking fire in that direction. And Hillary, love Hillary. Guys, I'm telling you, if you really think that there's anything here, it's just not.
Well, one candidate that Rick mentioned that it may be another candidate. One candidate we know is not running is Elizabeth Warren. Two liberal groups are finally taking no for an answer. The liberal icon and senator, yes, from Massachusetts, has repeatedly said she's not running, and I believed her. And now, wow, she's proved me right. Now, MoveOn.org and Democracy for America have finally gotten the message. They've ended their run Warren run campaign, but not before spending more than $1 million on the effort. Was that money well spent, Brad Hirschfield?
I suppose to the extent that they got Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders into the race, they should feel great because at some level they're all interchangeable. So Move On has moved on from its first choice. And they actually got, from their perspective, not bad number 2 and number 3. And now there'll be a really interesting dust-up for how that far-left part of the Democratic Party is going to relate or choose not to relate to Hillary Clinton.
Heather, quickly, are you surprised she's not running?
Not at all. I don't think any of us ever thought she would.
And Martin O'Malley was in this race 16 years ago, you should know. It's true. And Bernie was, sir, I talked to Bernie about this 8 years ago. So, no, they didn't get anything for their money.
Interesting. Well, Warren may be out. Martin O'Malley is running, as Rick just mentioned, of course. We all know that. But there's just one problem. Many people don't know who he is. Last Saturday, when he announced his candidacy, the top Google search on O'Malley was, who is Martin O'Malley? And the fourth most searched question on O'Malley was, how tall is Martin O'Malley? Actually, I don't know that. But at least people are searching for information about him. So how does he overcome this whole recognition issue, Heather?
Guys, here's the important thing. After Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio, they both announced the same weekend. That Monday, the first question for Hillary Clinton was, is she a Democrat?
Right.
That they asked, how old are they? They asked, have they ever run before? I think the seventh question for Hillary Clinton was, is she a Republican? Number 6 was, has she ever run? The general public doesn't know anything about these people. So they're just learning by what is out there right now.
Wow, we really do live in a bubble.
Yes, we do. No, that's the real story.
Heather summed it up absolutely beautifully. They don't know anything, and it's not going to do Martin O'Malley any good when they do know. But, you know.
Well, either way, we now have 19 men in the street ideas for Rick Unger after seeing those poll results. Anyway, coming up next, President Obama says the U.S. has become the most respected country in the world. Is he right? Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to The Wrap. Well, President Obama now boldly proclaiming his administration has turned things around when it comes to the way the world views the United States.
And today, once again, the United States is the most respected country on earth. And part of that, I think, is because of the work that we did to re-engage the world and say that we want to work with you as partners with mutual interest and mutual respect.
And conservative commentator Charles Krauthammer can hardly believe it.
He says we're the most respected country in the world once again. You wonder what world, what planet he's living on. And it's not just, as you enumerated, our enemies who have no respect for us. The Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, of course. ISIS, you can go all the way down. It's our allies. You think the Ukrainians respect us, or the Poles, the Lithuanians? How about the Saudis?
Well, a Gallup poll taken last year found that for the first time, more Americans think President Obama is not respected by leaders around the world, 53% saying that. How can the president, with a straight face, Heather Hansen, say that we're the most respected country in the world?
I have no idea. I think he is deluded, but I think that he puts himself as Peace Prize winner before he puts himself as president. And I think in that respect, he thinks that he has gained respect by trying to spread peace as opposed to act as president of the United States.
Will you defend your commander-in-chief, or do you think that was a little bit of a hyperbole on his
I think
part?
it's hyperbole on everybody's part. Look, it's a silly thing for him to say, because if you look at anything that's ever been done on who the most respected countries in the world are, you know who you'll never see on one of those lists? You'll never see the United States. You'll never see China. You'll never see Russia. You will never see Great Britain. You will never see any country in the world that has power, because the other countries don't like the countries that have power. Now, the question is, who's the most feared country? You'd probably get a different result. So no, the president shouldn't be saying something like that, because he can't possibly back it up. But Charles Krauthammer, you know, he can be good sometimes. That wasn't one of his finer moments. I'm sure he thought he was being adorable, which is a real push for Charles Krauthammer. But you want to know something? It wasn't adorable. It was offensive, and it was unnecessary.
Oh, it was true. Come on, Rick.
Really?
It was,
You don't think the Saudis have any respect for the United States?
Well, here's what we do
really?
know.
Is that what
Saudi
you think?
confidence in the United States has gone down.
That wasn't the question, though. And so I'm going to push Heather a little bit, because she's sitting there saying it was true. He said that the Saudi Arabians did not have respect for the United States. That is such a silly statement.
No, the problem is no one actually studies respect. All we can do is favorability from Pew.
Let's not
we
get
can do,
esoteric.
No, it's not. You don't want that word.
I can answer the question.
The word has never been used. What we do know is in Egypt,
Well, then
when
you
this
should
man
agree
took
that
office,
Charles Krauthammer was talking out of
no,
his you-know-what.
the president was
That's the
wrong.
question. The
They're
president
both
said it.
wrong. That's what I said.
Here's what we know. When the president took office in Egypt, the favorability rating of this country was 27%, it's now 10. In Germany, it was 64%, it's now 51. In Indonesia, where the president lived, it was 63, it's now 59. I don't blame the president for that entirely.
Is that
but I
respect
do
or
blame
is that
him.
I like?
But
Is
I
that
do
popularity
it's
or
favorability
respect?
is Pew's language. What I do blame him for is legacy shopping as he enters the last leg of his presidency.
I agree.
And that's a really
Now let's
poor
talk
way to
about
present
Charles
the state of the
Krauthammer.
country.
I could
I
really
agree
answer
with
the
you.
question.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. So,
You have something to say?
yes,
Okay.
I do. Usually I'm asking the questions. I think I could answer one in this case. So when the Saudi king blew off that meeting at Camp David
Right.
and said he had a scheduling conflict and was too busy.
Right.
It turned out that day he went to a horse show in England.
That's right.
And if that isn't just a big, you know what?
You know what
I
that
don't
was?
care what
That
you
was a
think.
big you know what to President Obama. Ask that question. Ask, you want to see where Krauthammer's right? Ask them if they respect President Obama, not the United States. And you've got
Isn't it
to
the
be
same
able,
thing?
No. And that's precisely the point. It's not even close to the same thing. Ask somebody who we're pointing a weapon at, a missile at, if they respect us or not. They're not going to like us.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to like whoever the president is if he's or she's the one who's pointing the missile, but they will respect us.
But Rick, it wasn't even a Triple Crown race. It was in England. He went to a horse show and he blew off the president. I have to move on and keep things happy between us. I don't like it when we fight. Anyway, President Obama's chief diplomat, Secretary of State John Kerry, is now recuperating at a Boston hospital after breaking his leg during a bike ride in Switzerland over the weekend. And he had a pretty sweet ride to take him there. Let's take a look, shall we? It was this massive Air Force C-17, normally reserved to transport about 100 troops. A Kerry spokesman says other personnel also made the trip to Boston with Kerry. And you thought that whole Bunker Hill skirmish was settled long ago. So, a C-17, no seats available on United, or at least, I don't know, something not quite as obnoxious. Please help me out here, Brad.
But he doesn't normally travel commercial, so who are we kidding? Look, the truth is, it's a heavier jet, but he normally travels on a plane. He
He
shares
weighs
with the First
114
Lady.
pounds. You don't need something that...
But then the story is, should he ever fly on anything special and not season the fact that he's got a broken leg and that's how he's being transported? So if we want to talk about it globally, maybe this, not a big departure from the norm.
I think it's a
not
medical
story.
thing. The fracture was near a hip replacement. That gets more complicated. I think it was a medical thing. They wanted to get him home.
Okay.
It was, but Brad, do you really want the Secretary of State to fly commercial?
No, I don't. That's
Oh,
my point. So
okay.
this is a non-story. If you want to talk about it in general, go for it. But this is silly.
This is silliness, and it's just more people trying to pick
it's
on
just silly.
Okay, silly season is over. Coming up next, the NRA has a new unofficial spokesman. You'll never guess who it is. Find out next. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Well, actor Vince Vaughn loves his guns. And unlike most of his Hollywood colleagues, he's giving a spirited defense of Second Amendment rights. Here's what he says in the latest issue of British GQ. We have the right to bear arms to resist the supreme power of a corrupt and abusive government. It's not about duck hunting. It's about the ability of the individual. It's the same reason we have freedom of speech. It's well known that the greatest defense against an intruder is the sound of a gun hammer being pulled back. Wow, didn't see that coming. The 45-year-old Vaughn, star of HBO's True Detective, tremendous show, and the guy who completely changed swingers and wedding crashers for the better, carried the entire movie, just a little editorial, is an unabashed libertarian. He also tells GQ he's in favor of armed security guards at schools, more on that in a moment. Is it surprising to hear such a bold defense of gun rights from a Hollywood actor, Mr. Unger, Mr. Hollywood himself?
I know many Hollywood actors that would give you that same defense on guns, and they're more than entitled to their opinion. And this whole myth that it somehow hurts their careers, it's so simple.
You don't think
Hollywood,
there's a blacklist?
guys, Hollywood cares about one thing.
Money.
It's called putting butts, if you'll excuse me, into the seats. We wouldn't care if you were the devil, and we've probably put the devil in movies. If you're going to sell tickets, they'll put you in the movie. Now, if you're not selling tickets, it becomes a very convenient excuse for actors to say, well, I got blacklisted. You know, it's not about that. It's about they're not selling tickets.
George Burns played the devil.
Vince
right?
Vaughn,
Jack
by the
Nicholson
way,
played
is
the
going to
devil.
be working for a long time. He
But
doesn't have to worry.
But isn't it interesting that it makes such news? I mean, today was
Sure
National
it
Gun
does,
Violence
yeah.
Awareness Day, and it was Wear Orange Day. And on Twitter, you saw Julianne Moore, and you saw the New York Mets, and you saw Sarah Silverman all wearing orange. But that wasn't news. Because they do it all the time.
And the Mets wear
And-
orange as one of their colors.
Right, but these were straight orange.
I love
Right,
Vince
so-
Vaughn. I am not going to stop seeing his movies because I might disagree with him on gun policy.
Right. This happens because it's not a story when they do it because man bites dog is
Right.
the story. And it is atypical, which doesn't mean there's a blacklist. It's atypical. I think what's common to both these camps is they say stupid things. Why is it well known that the best defense against an intruder is the sound of a gun hammer? What is he talking? Really? I'm pretty sure the best defense against an intruder is knowing your home will be surrounded by trustworthy police officers who will show up in short order when you call. Right? I get it, but there's a difference between a libertarian defense of gun rights, which I can respect, and fear-mongering and saying dopey things, which I can't. The truth is, if it wasn't Vince Vaughn saying it, he wouldn't get away with it.
Are you saying that the ADT signs that I have in both my front and backyard
Aren't the best thing?
No, I'm told that you don't put them up because then intruders know how to disable them or something. So you shouldn't
really?
advertise that you have ADT. And I don't. I'm saying that to throw people off at home. All right. Also, I have a
if you
killer
really
dog.
knew
want
what
his
we really
address,
knew,
you can call
this gets
me
too
at,
complicated. I do think part of the story here, why it did get news, is the level of distrust in government and the sense of not being able to rely on anyone but yourself at a moment of real danger. That's real out there. I don't think it's healthy, but I think it's real. And we better attend to that, because left, right, or in between, if there isn't a sense of trust in the larger institutions that we all benefit from, we're all going to pay a very high price.
I'm surprised you don't think there is a blacklist in Hollywood for certain conservative
You
actors.
know
Like
what?
Kelsey
If you're-
Grammer kind of got banished, and he's a
What are
great
you
actor.
talking about? Banished?
I
Are
don't
you
see him-
serious?
Well, I don't see him in many movies
He's
lately.
in everything he wants. Do you know that Kelsey Grammer has a deal at Paramount that whenever he wants to do a TV series, he not only can do it, he gets to executive produce it. He's anywhere he
Seen
wants
nothing
to
since
be.
Frasier.
He hasn't. Well, you
No, a
missed
ton of Broadway.
First of all, and you missed
Broadway,
Boss,
yeah.
which was only one of the greatest series I've ever seen.
I did miss it.
It was phenomenal. It was on Showtime.
Really?
It was
Yeah.
awesome.
It
or
was
no,
on
it was on
Stars.
No,
It was on
Something.
Stars.
Stars,
You're right.
yeah.
It was.
Oh, it was on Stars.
point
It was
is-
phenomenal. It's just not so, guys. I mean, maybe if you're on the bubble, can we take him? Can we leave him? I don't like him. I won't use him.
Like Jimmy Woods says
But
there's one as well.
It's just and Jimmy Woods works every day.
That's right. You see how I called him Jimmy? Like we're
You know,
close. Like
every day.
Yeah.
It's such bull. And I've said this. I have a very good friend who worked quite a bit as an actor, is a Republican, and he is always gushering about this. And I just say, dude, you're over. You're not getting work because nobody wants to hire you any longer. You had your time.
You said this to Eddie Murphy?
Not to Eddie Murphy.
Wow.
Who I presume is probably not a Republican. I said you can blame it on your politics if you want, but it's just not true.
Who do you think is the biggest closet Republican in Hollywood? Like, one who doesn't really
Caitlyn Jenner
advertise.
was, I think.
That's true.
Yeah, right,
Caitlyn
right,
Jenner.
that's right, yeah.
That's right.
And
That
boy,
shocked
that
everybody.
sure cost him a lot of work, didn't it?
well,
Still is.
Well,
Now that we
she
know
just
that
came
that
out.
she's Caitlyn, she's not going to get any work because she's a
Well,
Republican.
certainly
I
not
will
as
concede a
gross.
point. Rick
It's
just made a
silly.
great point.
It's
He isn't
silly.
going to hold that against him because they're going to make
not.
$1 zillion.
Right. I
It's
think it
about
depends-
money,
and
folks,
talent
not
and-
about your
yeah.
politics. Nobody has to go home with you. They just need you to sell tickets.
That's interesting. You just don't hear. I'll say this though. I think if you are conservative, you're not like a Vince Vaughn. You kind of keep that to yourself.
By the way, have you ever seen anybody work as long as he has with very little talent as Bruce Willis? Bruce Willis, who is a
The Sixth Sense
die
was
in the
very
wool.
good.
A lot of his movies were.
Yeah.
But he's still working whenever he wants. And yes, he's a Republican. Sly Stallone, 104 years old, still working when he wants to. He's a Republican.
super vocal
Arnold
about it.
Schwarzenegger has another movie coming out. Republican. That's silly.
Rick makes his point. He totally won that argument, no question. Potluck time is next. Rick doesn't get to go. Heather and Brad, stay there. Yes, it's potluck time. It's a part of the show where we go around the table, share our favorite stories of the day, and if you are wearing a Walter Payton signed tie, you get to go first. Hirschfield.
I
boom.
wish it was. Oh, I wish it was. I bring you two questions. What is crime, and where does it come from? And that's not simply a philosophical question. It's a very real challenge. New information out of New York City, where we come to you from, has seen an incredible spike in shootings this year alone. Not seen in many, many years. Baltimore's not getting any safer anytime soon, it doesn't seem. And Spike Lee's new movie coming out of Chicago is called Chirac. So that tells us exactly what's going on there. Gun violence is getting significantly worse. So Rand Paul gives a speech last week in Chicago on Friday, and he says the following: Crime is not a racial thing, it's a spiritual thing. And people thought, oh my God, this guy is completely crazy. I actually think he's 100% right, about 50% of the reality. Crime isn't about any one thing. And people who study crime have been running around trying to find the magic bullet, no pun intended, that would help us solve crime forever. There is no one magic bullet. Is crime a racial thing? It surely has some racial overtones. Is crime an economic thing? That's demonstrably true. There's just a higher incidence of crime when you're poor and you're hurting because of it. Is crime a spiritual thing? Probably not in the way that Mr. Paul means, because he talks about needing salvation. That's really between him and whatever God he believes in. It's uniquely personal. But if he means when he says it's a spiritual thing, that the decision to commit a crime, whatever your circumstances, does come from someplace deep inside, and that every person can make a choice and should be accountable for the choices they make, yeah, that's a spiritual thing. It's not a religion thing. It's a personal responsibility thing. And I think he's absolutely right. It seems to me to really move forward on crime, whether it's here in New York, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in Baltimore or anywhere else, we're going to need everybody at the table with all of these theories. Have the tough conversations about race. Have the honest conversations about economics and economic disparity. And don't be afraid of looking at people and saying, yeah, you make decisions with your life from wherever you are. Call it spiritual, call it personal responsibility, call it anything you want. But until that's a part of the equation, we're not going to solve crime anywhere for anyone.
The question is, can you get everybody to the table?
I think you can begin to if you could at least be willing to do the following. Whatever position you like least in this debate, figure out the partial truth in that argument. You could say it's largely false, but it can't be completely false, because all the purveyors of single responses to crime have proven wrong. So what I think Senator Paul did quite wisely is he reminded people, you can do all the theorizing you want about systems and systemic this and systemic that and economic the other thing. But there is a fundamental piece of people taking responsibility for the decisions they make in this world that's never going away. And if that's what spirituality is, I'm in favor of it, and he's right to have mentioned it.
It's interesting. You don't hear people talking about Rand Paul this week when it comes to that particular issue. The NSA thing completely overshadowed it.
He's been far too focused, I think, on the NSA thing, and probably should have focused a little
He
more
would
on
have done
that.
much better on
Yeah,
this issue than the NSA issue.
I agree.
So I heard you cook.
I do cook. Well, I don't actually cook, but I have cooked up a potluck for us tonight. We talk a lot on this table about religious freedom. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act was a huge topic for a long time about whether or not same-sex marriage, the people who have a religious objection to it should be able to refrain from making cakes or committing, doing cards, whatever it may be. Well, there's other religious issues that are coming up, especially with regards to our Supreme Court. Yesterday, I think the Supreme Court decided a case that a Muslim woman who had applied to work at Abercrombie & Fitch wanted to wear her headscarf. She was not given the job specifically because it did not go with Abercrombie & Fitch's look. The Supreme Court said that is not allowed, that you must make those types of accommodations for religion here in the United States. And the Supreme Court has consistently, when it comes to individuals, done this type of thing. Today I saw a case that I think is going to be very interesting where a 18-year-old who is graduating from a college in San Francisco, he's Native American, and he wants to wear a feather in his graduation cap.
High school or college?
He's graduating from high school.
Okay, I thought you said college. Go
There
ahead.
is a high school dress code that says that there's no decoration of the graduation caps. You cannot have any sort of drawings, anything like that, including rosaries, which apparently some people had wanted to put on there. And they're saying that since their rule is a bright line rule and doesn't accommodate any religions, that it's consistent with what the courts have said. However, in California, the Constitution there is a lot more permissive and says that you cannot discriminate against religion unless it is something that's going to be a safety issue or a disruption. The debate on this online has been huge. Some people think that he should be allowed to wear the eagle feather, that it's such an important part. Other people say, well, once you allow that, where does it end? And it's an interesting thing to me, as we talk more and more about religious freedom, why give it to adults and not to high school kids who have strong religious beliefs?
Let's ask the California native what he thinks of this.
I think it's silly. He should be able to do it if he wants to. It's easy to answer the question, where does it end? I couldn't come up with a religious reason to put something on my graduation cap. So it ends there,
But there's an argument. I mean, some religions believe in nudism. Do you let the kid go nude?
Really? What religion
No,
does?
because that's disruption, and that's what we're afraid to deal
Well,
with.
I don't know.
We
a
gotta
religion
go.
that actually
Gotta go.
does.
Yay or nay is next. This is the Daily
I'll
Wrap.
during the commercial.
It's absolutely happy time. From the files of Police Squad, ABC hit back in 1980, I believe, sometime around there. Led to the whole Naked Gun thing with Leslie Nielsen. Anyway, it's back to the Daily Wrap. Hi, guys. How you doing? It's time for Yay or Nay. I got so excited I just started going off on a tangent. This is the Odd Crimes edition. And first up, the next time you decide to ride and dash, that's when you don't pay your taxi driver, think again. An 18-year-old Ohio woman who skipped paying her cab fare after a 30-mile ride was given the choice of serving 60 days in jail or walking the 30 miles in 2 days. You'll never guess what she chose. She was also sentenced to 4 months probation and ended up having to pay a $100 cab fee anyway. Does the punishment fit the crime, Mr. Hirschfield?
I think it fits, but I don't like the substitute physical punishment. Do what the law says, punish her as is. The forced march thing, I don't know, that's like for Japanese prison camps, I think.
Wow, clearly Brad never drove a cab before and knows how hard these people work.
I'm
How
fine with
dare
it.
you.
She chose. She had a choice. She could have gone to jail. She chose to do the walk. I think it was totally appropriate.
Yeah, and I think she made the wise choice.
Me too.
30 miles in 2 days is not a big deal.
Good for you.
I hike every day, and I go about 3 miles, and then I begin to feel it in the lower Derriere area. And I got to tell you, 15 miles is a lot in one day.
It's a 5-hour walk.
I guess
It's
you
a
spread it out
marathon.
over a day.
It's
good
26.2
hike.
is a marathon.
You stop, you have a nice lunch.
So we can all agree that I'm completely out of shape despite said hike. Anyway, the Israeli army retracting punishment today for a U.S.-born Israeli soldier over a pork sandwich. Where are we going with this? The soldier violated the military's kosher rules when he ate a pork sandwich while in uniform. Rutro, the soldier, whose name has not been released, was originally given an 11-day prison sentence that was later changed to an 11-day confinement. I don't even know the difference. And was finally tossed out altogether. Okay, Brad, this one's coming to you first. Clearly,
surprise.
let's ask the rabbi, should the Israeli military have stuck to their original charges? Yea or nay?
Absolutely not. It's insane. Israel is a liberal democracy,
It is
not
pork.
a theocracy, and that is insane. In fact, and by the way, confinement was restricted to base, but he shouldn't have even been done that. The fact is, you don't restrict people's religious rights that way. So this was a mistake. By the way, I'm not even 100% certain. It's against the Code of Justice there. I didn't have a chance to check. His officer was crazy for even bringing him up on charges, and I'm glad they fixed it up.
Heather.
Agree with the rabbi.
Wow.
Oy vey.
Oy vey. Well said. I thought you were going to go off on some sort of, BB chant and say, this is another example.
This is
of
another example.
God.
Anyway, in a
I like to say
sad
it's like that.
twist of irony, rapper Lil Wayne caused quite an uproar at an anti-violence charity basketball game on Sunday. Apparently, the referee made some calls against the team the rapper was sponsoring that just did not sit well with said rapper. As you can see, Wayne and his entire crew are seen chasing the ref. One witness even saw the rapper spitting at him, which would lead to a technical in normal situations. Police were called to the scene. There were no arrests. Resorting to violence as an anti-violence charity basketball game. Yay or nay, Heather Hansen?
Oh, come on. Absolutely nay. It's ridiculous behavior. That grill's gone to his head.
You golf with Lil Wayne. I mean, are you surprised by his behavior?
I think he should have had a pork sandwich in his basketball uniform.
Well said. Good transition, Brad.
And him, I would have jailed for 11
Yeah.
days for doing it.
Yeah.
It's shameful behavior.
Or kept in
Ridiculous.
confinement, which means you keep on the base. Anyway, finally, streets in India are now a little safer. This after a pigeon suspected of spying for the country of Pakistan was arrested last week. We're being serious here. The pigeon was spotted in a village 2 miles from the Pakistani border with a message stamped on its body written in Urdu. That's the official language of Pakistan. Brad speaks Urdu on the cocktail party circuit, we should mention. Police x-rayed the bird, then proceeded to place it under arrest as a suspected spy. Surprisingly, this is not the first time a bird has been held in custody for being a Pakistani spy. The same thing happened back in 2010. Should the pigeon spy be forced to share its secrets and start chirping, Brad Hirschfield?
Clearly, Dr. Doolittle will be interrogating him. No, this is nuts. I mean, they may have used the bird that way, but what are you going to debrief a bird? It's
Heather?
crazy.
They're looking for evidence. I think it's interesting. Weren't there carrier pigeons, a long time ago? I'm sure that they are sharing better than our drones, perhaps.
Good point.
I understand Senator McCain is now putting in the budget for an electrified fence that will go 6 miles into the sky.
Wow. Everything is politicized in this man's world. Anyway, we gotta go. We gotta go. Good job, panel. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us tonight, everybody. I'm Joe Concha. Newsmax Prime with JD Hayworth. That's next.